What's happening, everyone? My name is Nick Clark, and welcome to Play Hard and Love Big Radio, the official podcast for Spotted Dog Yoga and SUP. Check us out at spotteddogyoga.com. On Play Hard and Love Big Radio, we are dedicated to bringing you the inspirational people, stories, and content to help you connect to your center so that you can go out and live your most purposeful and passionate life. And today we have an amazing guest that's going to bring some heat for you on an amazing show. Jim Miller, what's up, my friend?
Hey, man. It's a pleasure to be here. What's up? I mean, wow, that was a hell of an intro. I don't know if I'm an amazing guest, but I'll certainly take the word guest, no problem. And, it's just great to be able to chat about SUP.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, right now, we just talked about this a little bit, but where are you calling in from for this podcast?
So just now I'm in Scotland, so a little bit different from America. It's just gone 9 o'clock at night here. But if you take a map of Scotland, put a pin in the middle of the map, you kind of got me. I'm in the Highlands. So for the word Highlands, it's in the mountains. It's the best way of describing it.
And where were you born?
Where was I born? I was actually born in a little village called Huntingdon, down near Bedford and London. So quite a long way south, like total flat terrain. Didn't grow up nearby really any rivers or mountains at all. So how I've come to love them is quite interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. So how did your family end up moving to Scotland? And then how did you end up getting involved so much in mountaineering and just loving so much outdoor adventure so much?
Cool. Well, the answer might amuse you a little bit. So my family always loved going out into the mountains and walking. To be totally honest, me as a kid, I would just sprint off into the mountains in the distance and disappear, sit down on a rock, freeze myself silly, and sort of sit there and admire the view, because that's all else I could do. Did I enjoy it as a kid? Simple answer is probably not. I certainly don't think I did. I don't recall doing that. But I think by running off into the mountains, sitting on a rock and admiring the view, it actually helped me to build an appreciation for it. And then I've sort of stuck with sports through my time, dabbled in different skills and sports as a kid, but it wasn't until I sort of turned about 18, 19 that I really, really took up climbing. And I just found I absolutely loved it. And I wanted a career in the outdoors.
And so you started climbing, and then I know I've been looking at your Instagram. You do all sorts of climbing. You do climbing on ice and that's what you call ice climbing, right? And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. So loads of winter climbing, winter mountaineering, winter walking, that sort of thing. To put in context, this winter season, I think, don't quote me on the math, but I think I've been out 98 days on the mountain already this winter. And I've got a whole nother month of winter left. So probably 110, 120 by the end of it.
Wow, man, that's amazing. 32 years old, but weathered by the mountains. Is that what you said earlier?
Definitely.
So you decided you're going to make a career out of being in the mountains and mountain climbing. So how did you end up doing that? What did you end up doing to create that lifestyle for yourself?
Wow, that's an interesting question, actually. So I actually moved up to Scotland about 11 years ago. And at the time, I didn't really know my exact path, the sports that I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to work in the outdoors. So I did an outdoor instructor training program. So I basically went and got qualified in, I think it's about 15 or 16 different sports. So I do quite a lot, and I've progressed quite a lot of them as well. But it wasn't really until sort of a few years ago that I really decided SUP and climbing were the two that I wanted to knuckle down into. So for about sort of 9 or 10 years of being up here, I sort of partook in everything, teaching, canoeing, whitewater rafting, kayaking, paddleboarding, climbing, skiing, ski touring, biking, you name it. So yeah, when you say you see I do a lot on Instagram, you're not wrong. I do a lot, but it tends to now be the climbing and the SUP where my heart really is.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. And so, and not just SUP, but whitewater SUP mainly, but also you do some open water SUP as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, bit of open water paddleboarding on the local locks nearby. So, local locks to my house, majority of them tend to be a little bit on the smaller side, a few kilometers big, sort of like Loch Inch, Loch Morlick. But then we get some larger ones, obviously, in Scotland that I do go and paddle and lead groups on as well. So, something like Loch Ness. So, I actually do like a SUP across Scotland tour for my company that obviously I run. Which is quite cool. You sup from one side of Scotland to the other and through Loch Ness as well, which is pretty iconic.
And that's the company that you're the director for, the Highland Outdoor Adventures. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it's still quite
Yeah.
new. It's only a year old. But I decided basically a year ago that I needed to have more SUP in my life. So I quit my job and my career for last 10 years that I was in Scotland to set up my own company, basically to predominantly SUP and then do a bit of climbing as well.
Wow, man. So tell me about that trip across the Loch Ness. What's that like?
Wow. So it's pretty cool, but it can be a little bit hairy, is the honest answer, because Loch Ness, by its very nature, is a massive loch, and it runs from sort of southwest to northeast. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in Scotland, depending on how you view it, our predominant wind direction is southwesterly. So by the time you get to the far end of Loch Ness, the waves can get pretty chunky, actually, just by the fetch of the wind sort of picking up across the whole distance of it. But I run it as a sort of 5-day trip from one side of Scotland to the other. So it actually takes 2 days to paddle Loch Ness on its own. You could do it in a day, but it'd be quite a big day, is the honest truth. And it'd be a very big day with clients.
So you take 5 days to do it. How do you take in all the gear and whatnot? How does the whole process work?
Great. So dry bags is the honest truth. So you can camp en route, or there's hostels, depending on what people wanted to do. But yeah, dry bags on the front and probably the back of the SUP. So something like a Hala Rado would be the one that I tend to use, or if it's a smaller person, a Hala Radido, if that's how you pronounce them. I actually don't know. I could be totally wrong. That's just how I've pronounced them. So
Yeah.
correct me if my American terminology here is wrong. Please do correct me. But no, they give loads of space on the SUPs for bags, which is pretty handy. And you've got options on it, so you can paddle along the locks, but then you can have a little bit more adventure and you can paddle a couple of rivers while you're going as well. So there's a couple of sort of grade 2 rivers en route as well, if people are up for it, that you can go and have a bit of fun on.
And what kind of experience does somebody have to have on a stand-up paddleboard in order to do an adventure like that with you, man?
Honest answer is not a huge amount, because the first day
Yeah.
you actually start in a canal. So you paddle up the canal. You start with beautiful views across Ben Nevis, and you paddle out of Fort William up towards Loch Lochy, very aptly named. We're in Scotland. We name our locks just brilliantly. Loch, just incredible. So you paddle up this canal. So long as you've been on a SUP a few times before, at the very least, and you can paddle in a straight line, the rest of the skills you can pick up en route, and they can be taught en route as well, which is good.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I know a lot of people just jump into stand-up paddleboarding, which I have a lot of respect for. I mean, I just jumped on one and kind of went for it. But there is an element of safety that's super important, and an understanding of the safety protocols when you're on a paddleboard. Can you speak a little bit to the safety protocols that you utilize when you're taking people on adventures, or when somebody's just learning to paddleboard? What are the things that you're teaching them so that they're safe on the water?
Hey, great. That kind of depends a little bit on the person and the environment that we go into. So if it's, for example, whitewater, my big things would be safe and appropriate swimming in whitewater and trying to get back on the board as quickly as physically possible. So the least amount of time you're in the water, the better. It just minimizes risk of foot entrapment, hitting rocks, trees, any and all the above. We don't have a huge amount of undercuts in terms of the rocks in Scotland, but we certainly do have a lot of shallow rivers, so you tend to hit things quite a lot when you fall off, which can be a little bit on the less pleasant side if you're in the water for a longer period of time. So trying to get back on the SUP in a timely manner, so actually getting that really efficient. Safe whitewater swimming, and to be honest, really try and drill in the appropriate use of a leash. So obviously, I'm sure you're well aware, in Britain at the minute, we've got this whole thing going on with British canoeing sort of banning leashes on their formal courses, amongst other things. It's interesting, I've always tried to go down the line of teaching people to make appropriate decisions on different things. Of course, there are some rivers I wouldn't use a leash on. If it's completely tree lined and it's really narrow, it's going to be a terrible idea. But yeah, nice big wide American open river that's super deep, I probably want a leash. I want to get back to that board as quick as I physically can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And also there are the leashes that Hala makes that are the detachable leashes, and those ones I know are really great for people when they're on the river too, because if they do get stuck, they can pull that leash off of themselves and they don't get stuck and pulled down underneath a rock or a log, right?
Yeah, totally. So the Hala leashes are great because they're a 2-point release system effectively. So if you connected it to the quick release belt on your buoyancy aid, your quick release belt is a release point straight away. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, that you had forgotten to trim the tape on your quick release belt and it was way too long, and it could, in theory, it's been known to happen, but it's super rare, sort of twist a little bit if you release it and get stuck in the buckle. The good thing with the Hala leash is it's got a sailing shackle that's on the back as well. So if something went wrong with my primary release, I've got this secondary that I can reach to, and I know that I've always got something that I can go with. I kind of relate it in many respects to like if you were to go parachuting, which I never actually have, but I'd really like to.
Yeah, surprising you haven't.
Yeah.
It's really surprising you haven't with all the things that you've done, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'll get there.
Yeah, but it, like you're saying, sorry I interrupted you, but you're saying it's nice to have a backup.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's crucial, I see all sorts of weird, wacky, wonderful uses of leashes in the UK, and I just sort of sit there and I scratch my head and I wonder where they've picked up this. I've seen people that have taken ankle leashes and not put them on their ankle, but actually wrap them around their throw bag, which is really odd, and then connect their throw bag to them in a waist waist loop, which is totally fine. But why did you put it around your throw bag? Now you can't use your throw bag. That's one of the weirdest ones I've seen.
How interesting, man. Well, the sport has definitely taken off in just taken off in the United States. What is it like there? Has it really started to boom as well?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely, definitely is the honest answer to that. Whitewater SUP in the UK, in my opinion, from what I see, it's probably the quickest growing discipline of paddle sports. Stand-up paddleboarding now is kind of bigger than all the other disciplines combined in the UK, but whitewater SUP is still just a little niche market of that, but it's growing really, really quick. And the more people that go into it, they just realize it's pretty awesome. The majority of people, however, in the UK do tend to sort of sit around this kind of grade 2 bracket, which is totally fine. The wonderful thing about SUP is it's fully inclusive. Everybody just loves it and want to have fun. You don't feel that you're being pressured to do anything. But I would say in the UK, we've got very few people that actually kind of push the realms of the sport. When I went over to America this September to paddle with Chris and Will and, Paul and most of the Hala team, I was just blown away at how many people over there are actually kind of pushing the sport. It's just amazing to paddle with them. So in the UK, we've barely got anybody actually doing it. And the people that are doing it, they tend to be very Instagram heavy, which is brilliant for the sport, but it actually makes us look like we've got more people doing it than we really do.
How interesting, man. Yeah. And so what do you attribute that to? Is it because it's just a little bit new? Is it newer there than it is in the United States? Or are the rivers not as big and as mean and as ferocious? Or why do you think that there's more people pushing the limits over here than there are there?
I think, yeah, some of it does come down to the rivers that you just said there. So in the States, well, the ones that I paddled with Chris and Will and Paul and everybody, they tended to be deeper and bigger water. And actually the swims in many respects, while being much more scary, were safer. Over here, we tend to get shallow, technical, creaky rivers with really, must-make maneuvers and tight turns and bends. But I didn't really find that in the States when I was paddling with them. I just found it was like scary big water, but kind of safe-ish, if that makes sense. Whereas the swims here, it's like it really hurts if you hit something. You've got to make those moves to know that you're not hitting those rocks. But that is where the retractable fin comes in. Just phenomenal for me over here. I couldn't think of paddling a board that didn't have a retractable fin. And actually, before I had a Harla, I sort of had this custom-made retractable fin from a friend of mine who's the ex-national trainer for Scottish SUP. He designed his own retractable fins before anybody else. He sort of did it, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago. So it was just absolutely incredible. He was like the pioneer of the UK's paddleboarding, and nobody got behind him. And he had this retractable fin, but it didn't retract inside the board. It just retracted onto the board, so it wasn't quite perfect. It wasn't as good as a Harla.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, hey, for everybody that's listening, I didn't mention this about Jim Miller, but last year you were named Hala's Ambassador of the Year, which is quite the honor, man. I mean, Hala Gear is such an amazing paddleboard company. I love their showroom in Steamboat Springs. It's Spotted Dog Yoga and Paddleboard Company. We do all of our yoga paddleboarding on Hala. And I mean, that's an amazing accolade that you've got there. Congratulations, man. And what has that been like to be the Hala Ambassador of the Year? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, wow, is the honest answer. I didn't expect that by any means. I'm on the whole other side of the world, effectively, from Hala. So first off, it was just incredible that they even wanted to try and make me an ambassador and try and support, both myself and paddleboarding over in Scotland, UK, Europe, that sort of thing. It was just phenomenal of them to even try and think about doing that, let alone put as much of an effort as they have into it. It's almost like every day I'm chatting with them in emails, and it feels so friendly. It's a lovely vibe from everybody there that I've chatted with and that I've paddled with on the river, back in September. It's just awesome. So to try and be named like ambassador for the year for them, a privilege is like a total understatement to the word. It's like it's an honor almost. How I got that, I have absolutely no idea. There's definitely far better paddleboarders out there than I am. I'm pushing it a little bit, of course, in Scotland, and I'm doing what I can, but, I'm not the best, by any means, not in my mind. So what they see in me, I don't know, but hey, it's just a pleasure.
Well, man, I mean, you're a super humble guy. I know, like anybody that has an opportunity I know I mentioned your Instagram, but that's the way I know you really, but anybody that has an opportunity to look at your Instagram, the things that you're doing are phenomenal. And a lot of times when I look at those things, I think that is something that I will never do. But then a lot of times when I look at them, I think, man, this guy really inspires me to push myself beyond my limitations, beyond what my first initial thought is, which is like, hell no, to like, oh yeah, you know what? Actually, I could take my paddleboarding to a whole new level. I could take my instructional the way that I teach people how to paddleboard to a whole new level. And really, when I see your stuff and see what you're doing, that's what it makes me feel like. And so, maybe you don't think you're the best paddleboarder in the world. Maybe you're not, but your passion behind it is huge. What is it, Jim, that you love about paddleboarding and in general, but the whitewater paddleboarding that makes you so passionate about pushing the limits of it?
Wow. What a question there. Can I just start by saying, hey, you might not think you'll ever do it, but if you're ever over in Scotland, drop me a message. it would be an absolute pleasure to go and paddle with you.
All
Anytime
right.
you're over in Scotland, let me know. Let's go for a paddle. Let's get on the river, man. It'll be class. Or sea or open water, whatever works for you. No problem with me. So what makes me
Thank you.
passionate about SUP? Wow. To be honest, I kind of stand on one and a smile just crosses my face. I don't know why. I'm really happy. I'm in like my happy place when I'm stood on a SUP. And that could be on the sea, on the river, on the open water. It doesn't matter. But I love trying to see people excel and push, themselves. And when I see that, it's just amazing. And the awesome thing about SUP is, for every individual, they're pushing themselves at their own limits. So for a beginner, going into grade 1 and succeeding and, being able to, at the end of the day, stand back and just be like, that was amazing. I want to come back. I want to paddle grade 2 next time. It's awesome. Exactly the same as like watching somebody surf their first wave on the river. It's just incredible. I've sort of got this little thing in the back of my head it's like my only real ambition for this year on SUP. We've got this wave on the River Garry. It's not like a complicated river. It's grade 3 plus really. Used to be grade 4, but it got downgraded, so it's about grade 3 plus. But there's this wave on it which is called Surf SUP. But I really want to get a tandem surf on it. I want to get a second paddleboarder in there alongside me on the wave. But it's a really awkward wave to get two people on. But I just think it's gonna be so cool. That'll like make my year if it happens. That'll make me even more passionate.
Because not only do you love watching others excel through your teachers and through your teachings and developing themselves, but you would just love to see them doing it right next to you, right? Like, okay, we're doing this together. I mean, that's a good feeling, I bet. A tandem, dude.
It's an amazing feeling. Absolutely amazing feeling is the honest answer to that. I've been out over the weekend just running a coach training course, just in sort of grade 2 plus whitewater. But it's just awesome seeing, the 4 candidates that were on this, sitting at their SUP whitewater coach training, in the skills that they were bringing to it and the knowledge that they were bringing to the course was just fascinating. Like we had people that have paddled over in France and, people that have paddled over in Australia and just different techniques that are kind of coming into it. It just makes me sit there and be like, it's such a new sport. We've got so much more to learn.
Yeah, that's really exciting, man. The very beginning of like an era, it seems like it's just started to blow up in this area. My wife and I have our business in Folsom, California, which is where Spotted Dog Yoga and SUP is, but we live in outside of Boise, Idaho, and up here in Boise, like we're right along the Payette River, and it's on the daily when I'm driving up towards McCall, I see those guys parked out there hitting the river with their paddle boards. And it seems like every year there's more and more people that are out there doing it. And, when I first got a chance to try it, I tried it with Davide Sartoni up in Coloma, up in California. And I mean, I just thought it was a blast, dude. Like one of the greatest things is the first thing he had us do is just get on the board and practice falling. And I'm like, hell, I'm good with that. Like I know it's going to happen more and more, but I'm super good with just learning how to fall in. And so, but once that fear was over, once I learned to fall in, I felt like it was okay to fall, and then it was like, I was willing to and open to really push the limits of the paddleboarding on the river. It was cool. Can you talk a little bit about like when you're working with a beginner on whitewater SUP, how do you teach them to maneuver within the water and the current?
Hey, great question. How do I teach them to maneuver within the current itself? So this kind of depends a little bit on the individual and how much they're willing to kind of push and fall off a little bit, because we can maneuver even with beginners quite easily in the flow, but it's the point where we come out of the flow and make the eddy that people tend to swim quite a lot on SUP. So I find more often than not, I'm teaching maneuvering across eddy lines as opposed to teaching maneuvering in the flow. So I'm really trying to think about edge control coming across the eddy And when they get that, I find that actually they tend to be able to maneuver the SUP a lot easier in the moving water, because they know that they're not going to swim coming out of the moving water going into that eddy, and they've got more confidence to do it. But if I had to put, one thing on sort of maneuverability within moving water, it would be the ability to read the water and kind of understand what's going on. If there's a lovely big black glossy tongue of water, and then there's some really choppy stuff off to the side, you obviously want to go down the tongue of white water. You don't want to go down the choppy stuff because it's probably going to be full of rocks. Go and follow that lovely, lovely big green tongue or black tongue or whatever it is of white water. It tends to be black in Scotland, by the way. Our water's really peaty. But in America, it tended to be a bit more green. And, paddling with Davide in Montenegro, it was just like crystal clear blue. So it just depends, I suppose, where you are in the world. So yeah, the ability to read the water and see where it's flowing is crucial. And then the ability to cross an eddy line, so the correct edge control coming across that line. Those are my two skills.
Awesome. And can you talk about a little bit about how to balance your weight when you are going across the different current lines?
Hey, of course. So in terms of teaching a beginner, to be totally honest, I want them, generally speaking, to try and paddle coming across the eddy line on the upstream side paddling. So when they're paddling on that upstream side, they're naturally going to have more weight on that upstream edge, and it's going to allow them to carve into the eddy instead of flip them into it upside down. It's always entertaining when that happens, but it may be not as entertaining for them. So yeah, ideally paddling on that upstream edge would be my first port of call. And if they really didn't want to do that and they just felt like they could only paddle on one side, whether that's a righty or a lefty, we do get people in that category, totally. Then I want to try and focus a little bit more on the pressure of the feet and, transition of body weight from one side to the other. Because you can still paddle on the downstream side, but you've got to be a little bit more finicky with getting your body on that upstream edge to carve it into that eddy.
Yeah, right on. That's good tips, man. Thank you. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit. Let's move from the beginners and the training that you do with them, but let's talk a little bit more about you and some of the things you've paddled. So you did the whole Spey descent in 12 hours and 31 minutes on a stand-up paddleboard. Tell us about that experience. What was that like? And where is that?
Cool. So the River Spey pretty much runs from Fort Augustus all the way through quite a lot of Scotland, actually, past my house, which is pretty cool, in sort of Newtonmore, through Aviemore, Granton, all the way down to finish sort of in the northeast of Scotland, in the sea, obviously at sort of Lossiemouth. So it's about 170 kilometers or so. Very few people try and paddle the Spey in a day. It's got numerous different positions that you can start on. So you can start from Aviemore, which is quite a long way down already, Lockhinch, Kinnussy, and then there's a sort of Newtonmore get on. So Newtonmore is actually where I live and where I work. So it worked perfect for me because I just managed to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, put my head torch on. It's a very good head torch, by the way. Fully waterproof, lights up like 200 meters away. I was basically paddling in daylight. So it wasn't pitch black, awesome. Don't worry. And just carry my SUP, walk over to the river, put it on and paddle down. So started at 4 a.m. I had sort of this hope to do it in under 12 hours. So I'd sort of timed everything and figured it all out. And if I had enough water and I had the wind behind me, I might have enough energy to be able to make this in under 12 hours. Just to put in context, the River Spey is predominantly sort of grade 1 with some sections of grade 2, 2+ on it. So it's not like a super quick moving river, even though it does strangely have the title of Scotland's quickest river. It really isn't. It's not even close to it. It flows all year round, which is why it gets that title. So when the other rivers don't have any water in because it's not been raining, the Spey's still flowing. That's the only reason it gets that title. It's definitely not the quickest. But anyway, put this head torch on and I'm paddling down the river. in the dark, but with my head torch, listening to all the sounds of the birds and the animals nearby and the sound of the moving water. It was just brilliant. Paddled all the way down, and sun came up just past Aviemore, which is kind of, I don't know, maybe like a quarter of the way there. So I've done quite a lot by dark, but I'd arranged to have a couple of mates, and my parents actually came out and said hi as well. Met me on river just to make sure I was still all good and managing en route. And I was on target to do it in under 12 hours. Up until a village called Rothes, where my last mate came out and met me, a chap called Jim Gibson. See, a chap I chatted about earlier, the ex-national trainer for SUP for Scotland. He's amazing. Like, he has single-handedly pioneered SUP in Scotland. Just lovely person, wow. Amazing. But he came out and met me, and I realised at that point just how tired I was after having already paddled just non-stop, no stopping, no nothing, for about sort of 11 hours or something at that point. And I hadn't even paused to have a bit of water or chocolate bar or anything like that. I just gone with it. And I realized at that point, this is a really stupid idea to try and do this in under 12 hours. I need to slow down. I need to chill here, because I'm going into what is probably the most dangerous section of the river. It's always tree lined, and all it takes is one, tired mistake here, and that's a bad day. So I gave up on my aim of under 12 hours. And I just decided I'd do it, as safely as I could. So hence the 12 hours, 31 minutes. But what was hilarious, and I do mean truly hilarious here, is the day before I'd got an email from the national governing body, so our Scottish Canoe Association, which is just about to be rebranded to Paddle Scotland. Much better name in my opinion, but they'd emailed me and asked if I could join this meeting as a whitewater rafting technical expert in the evening. So I emailed back and said, look, I'm doing the Spade Ascent in a day on SUP. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. The email I got back was just brilliant. It was, Jim, I know you'll be done by midday. I wasn't done by midday.
Jim, I know you'll be done by midday. Be here.
Pretty much. So I still managed to attend this meeting after having paddled near enough non-stop for 12 hours and 31 minutes on a SUP for 170 kilometers, which was just remarkable. But I tend to be quite professional when I'm in meetings. I don't sit there and, do what most people do and sit in their pajamas or have a beer or anything like that. So that's the one where I was just I'm breaking this rule. I'm having a beer. I am celebrating it. I don't care what anybody else thinks. There is a beer in my hand and I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah. Good for you, man. That's so awesome. Yeah. Well deserved, man. 12 hours, 31 minutes. That's big time. And since you've done that, have you talked to anybody or heard of anybody doing it, in that time frame?
So I'm the only person to have tried it on SUP. So people have done it from Aviemore, Lochainch and Canussie, which are all shorter distances. The current record, I think, from Lochainch is around about 11 or 12 hours, but that cuts out 30 or 40K. The current record from Canussie, which is the next higher up, is 19 and a half hours in a tandem canoe. So there was two people paddling. And then you go to the highest get on, which is Newtonmore, which is where I went from. But it's only been done once from there in a day. So, I hold a record unto myself, which is not really a record, to be honest. So I'm just waiting for a better paddler to come along and completely and utterly destroy it. And I have no doubt that if somebody wants to go out there and do it in under 12 hours, it is totally doable. I just wasn't willing to make that risk on the day and keep paddling while I was tired. But, if I was to opt and not take all the safety kit that I did, I had a massive 100-liter duffel bag, dry duffel bag, obviously on the front of my SUP, full of warm layers and, thermos and everything. Not that I ever used any of it, but I wanted it there just in case something were to go wrong. Because if it did, I'd want to be able to deal with that on my own.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. Awesome, brother. All right. Well, then let's talk about another I don't want to I don't want to call it an accolade, but another awesome adventure you did when you talk about you paddled the first 5 grade on a SUP or grade 5. Let me say that again. You paddled the first grade 5 on a SUP in the UK, at least as you know it. Where was that at?
So that was on the River Findorn, Randolph's Leap. So I just want to put out there, in my mind, it's not grade 5. I've got to be honest, it might get that grade on a guidebook, but I don't think it is grade 5. It's my truthful, honest answer to it. Not in comparison to grade 5s I was trying to paddle with Chris and Will and Co in America. That was just like, wow, I'm out of my league.
Totally different water, you're saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Findorn, Randolph's Leap, but it's got a really kind of a nice diagonal line to it. And, if you hit all the moves, it's like kind of grade 3 plus. But if you miss a move, you end up in something called the cauldron, which is not somewhere you want to be. It goes without saying, cauldron, boiling water, it's just chaos in there. So you'd probably want help on that. But if you just make this really easy diagonal line, it might get grade 5, but it's not really it. In terms of the UK's grade 5s, I've got to be totally frank, it's probably one of the very few that I can actually see ever really being doable on a SUP in the UK, because our rivers aren't big water grades. It's techie, you must make moves, shallow, and I don't know how many of those will be doable on SUP. Some, of course, yeah, no doubt, but don't know about all.
Man, when you're when you are getting ready to go into a big rapid, a big hole, a big run, what's your body feeling like? What are you feeling like going into it?
Smiling, happy, awesome. I don't know if all those words sum it up.
Energized. Do you ever get like a little bit nervous? Do you get a little shaky or at all? Or are you like so confident that it just happens?
No, I do get nervous. I definitely do. I'm not going to lie on that front. In terms of UK paddling, there's nothing really that's made me nervous. But when I was in the States, it was quite interesting paddling on the Upper Gourley with Chris and Will. Every rapid we'd approach and they'd just be like, oh yeah, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, this is the line you want to hit. And I'd just be like, yeah, cool, that's fine, no problem, yeah, it's easy, no, yep, not worried. And they were just like, they were clearly concerned about like every rapid, but I didn't have that fear in me until I hit Pillow. For some strange reason, the lovely big fluffy white water of Pillow Rock, and I just looked at that and I was just like, nah, that's scary. The one friendly rapid on the whole river, I was just like, nah, that's not for me. I don't know why.
So funny how the mind plays tricks on us, Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, I get it. Wow, dude, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing those stories about your SUP. It's really exciting to hear. You are definitely a major ambassador for that sport, and I love your enthusiasm about it. It just reminds me to lift the sides of my cheeks up and smile no matter what it is that I'm doing, and I'm super excited to get my paddleboard out and start riding here really soon. Can you talk just briefly? I know we touched on Hala gear a little bit, but can you talk about why it is that you love the Hala gear boards? What makes them exceptional in the field that you are so passionate about?
Wow, what a question. I mean, obviously the retractable fin that we've already discussed, it's the only real board with a retractable fin, let alone one that actually retracts inside the board, which for shallow rivers in Scotland, I can't think of paddling anything else. And why anybody else does paddle anything else, I have no idea. It is made for our rivers over here. But the rocker, front and back, absolutely crucial in my mind. Obviously, that rocker on the front to be able to ride up over features as opposed to purling the board into the waves and holes. It just allows me to get over waves, holes, features, troughs, the whole shebang. without worrying that I'm just going to fall off my SUP. But that rocker on the back at the same point in time, allowing me to just step back a little bit, and all of a sudden the board can spin on a dime. It's so maneuverable while still being able to do big water. It's just like, wow, absolutely. What a design. Phenomenal. For me, I really like having a 6-inch deep board. I think that's really critical for whitewater. Not everybody paddles that over in the UK. Again, why? I don't know. But for me, that depth of board is really, really critical. It gives me more that I can put on the edge. Instead of just having like an inch to play with, I've now got 2 or 3 inches to play with before I'm going to fall off the SUP. And I think that's really, really handy. The durability, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had some nicks on hollow boards, but I've not had any punctures. And I've paddled some really, really sharp stuff. I even had a mate push me into a really sharp limestone wall in Spain, which was by total accident. They weren't paying attention where they were going. They were very apologetic. And, don't get me wrong, it damaged your side of the board, but there was no air coming out. There was no puncture, no nothing. It was just like, wow. If this was another board, yeah, I'd probably be walking back to the car right now.
Yeah, they're tough, man. That's for sure. Like all the boards that I've had, I get little nicks on them and whatnot, but no holes, no issues at all with them. And, a majority of the ones that I'm riding are like on lakes or I'm hitting up the ocean water and whatnot, and I do also appreciate the 6-inch depth on those boards because I feel like I have so much more stability. I've jumped on boards that have like 4-inch depth or, just aren't as wide. It's just obviously there hasn't been as much detail put into creating like less expensive boards, and so I think it's important for people to understand the power of purchasing a board that is made in a quality way like Holly Gear's boards are.
Definitely. And the size range, if I can just say, to be able to have the 711 that, I can still have fun on like a playboat SUP, but I can get a kid on that. That could be the perfect board to get a kid into entry-level whitewater SUPs class, all the way through to like, the biggest, chunkiest person in the world. Put them on a 10'10" Rado and they'll still get down. We've just got such a good categorization of sizes in there. It's wicked.
Yeah, it is wicked. The board that I just got, which I really like, is the Hall of Fame. Have you ever tried the Hall of Fame?
I haven't. No, I was kind of looking at it. I wasn't quite sure actually because it's got the flat back to it, doesn't it? It's not.
And I don't use it. I don't use it in whitewater, but I definitely I've been using it for some camping excursions and just an overnighter and some fishing. And we have 2 young boys that I can take both of those boys on that with some, the day trip stuff, like all the lunches, all the drinks, everything. And it's like, no problem, it's like a boat, but I really like it a lot, man. It's a fun board.
Oh, awesome. I was kind of looking at it thinking with the flat back, it's probably going to have better tracking in the water. Is that the case? Because I've not actually paddled one.
It definitely tracks well for me. It has the retractable fin, but it doesn't have the 2 side fins on it, so it's obviously made for some more whitewater. So for me, it tracks really well. I feel like I can push powerfully with my feet to help me turn easier because it's so stable, but you should try it out, man. The Hall of Fame. I kind of just like the name of it too. I feel like that's where you're going, Jim. The Hall of Fame, baby.
Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I need to try the board first and then maybe I can say that.
Yeah, there you go. Then you can claim that. You were I was talking about kids and you were talking about the possibility of getting kids on boards. And it made me think about something that you put in the forum about when you were a kid, when you dove to the bottom of the river near a waterfall. Can you talk about that experience and how you are in some way, shape, or form like a real life Smeagol from Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, sure. I wasn't really sure what to put on the answer to your question because I think it was just like, tell me something interesting about yourself. So I was like, what do I put here that, very few people actually know? I can remember swimming as a wee kid over in Ireland below this waterfall, and I swam down to the bottom. I just saw something shiny, so I grabbed it, as you do. It turned out to be a ring. So yeah, there you go. I swam to the bottom of a river, real life kind of Smeagol, and grabbed a ring. I've had it ever since. So yeah, I've kept it.
You got it. And so when you find that lady that you love, I mean, I haven't asked you. Are you married? Do you have a wife?
No, not at all. Not at all. So I'm still looking for the right lady, as you say. Maybe one day, but you know, I'm in love with SUP. You know, SUP is my lady. It's terrible, I know.
It's not terrible, man. It's great. You got to throw yourself into what you love. If you throw yourself into what you love, you'll find the people that you love, and maybe that'll be a lady. But my question is for you is when you do find that lady down the road, even if it's not, you know, for another 20 years or so, will she be the recipient of that ring?
Oh,
or will you keep it?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Maybe that's
awesome,
cheap, but
man.
you know what? I think it comes with memories. That's cool.
No, that's cool, Smeagol. Jim Miller, a.k.a. Smeagol, man. Oh, my gosh. Hey, I know we talked a lot about SUP, and we're coming to the end of time here, but I really want to touch quick on the mountaineering stuff that you do, too, because I've been looking at those pictures of you ice climbing. What in the world is that like, dude?
In a word, cool. But from the literal sense, it's pretty freezing, but it's also just awesome. It gets you into places that you're just not going to go otherwise. Well, I say that actually, I do have a plan to take my SUP up in summer and do some crazy trip from where I normally ice climb. But you know, we'll see from that if it actually happens. But yeah, it's just really, really, really nice. You go up, walk into the mountains, take all your kit with you, start below this stunning route. Hopefully, anyway, you know, it's got snow and ice on it. It doesn't always in Scotland. Climb up, and it's this awesome feeling to get to the top on a good weather day and see the views, you know, other people climbing about you in the corrie. It's just nice and social and beautiful at the same time.
And what kind of equipment are you using? I know you have pick. I guess I will butcher the names of the equipment you use. So what kind of equipment are you using to do this?
I mean, definitely using ice axes. Yep. So ice axes, crampons, harnesses, ropes, gear to put in the walls. So nuts, hexes, cams. Cams tend not to work too well in certain environments in winter, but sometimes they're okay. They can kind of ice up. The cracks can ice up quite a bit, so the cams then don't work very well. But on a non-icy day, cams are great. So yeah, I'm climbing up, you know, I'm putting in gear in the wall, I'm clipping my ropes to it to safeguard me, building myself some sort of belay. You know, in winter that could be dubious quality gear, you know, it just sort of depends a little bit. Find the best belay that I can and bring my mates up to me and just keep going. You know, it's awesome to do it personally. It's awesome to teach it. You know, it's awesome to just help mates out and, you know, go on their first experiences as well. So yeah, pretty cool.
What's the coolest ice hike that you've ever done? Ice climb. What's the coolest ice climb that you've ever done?
Coolest ice climb I've ever done. Wow. Now you got me thinking. I think I don't know about coolest. Coolest is an interesting word there. I think my favorite one I've ever done is not by any means the hardest I've ever done. It was just a bit of a rarity. So there's a route called Zero Gully on Ben Nevis. So Ben Nevis is like, it's world famous, obviously, you know, as it is for being the biggest mountain in Scotland, but also holding, you know, a route called Point 5, which is often considered to be one of, if not the world's most famous ice climbs. I've climbed that numerous times. It's lovely. But there's this route called Zero Gully that's kind of just on the other side of this buttress that's always known to be a bit less good on the quality of ice, is maybe the diplomatic way of saying it. You climb up, you put your ice screws in, and you definitely don't trust any of them. They're just terrible. You know, you may as well just be soloing the route. But I got below it this day, and I kind of looked up, and I was like, whoa, the quality of ice here is actually maybe okay instead of just terrible. It was like, actually, some of these screws are kind of usable. This is good. Let's do it. So I climbed that with a mate of mine in just phenomenal condition that it never gets in, on a total bluebird, stunning, lovely day. So yeah, that's probably my favorite ice climbing route. But I don't know about coolest. I'm going to have to think on that one.
Well, I think favorite kind of sums it up. I mean, a little bit of my California came out right there, right? What's your coolest, man? Well, brother, I guess my final question for you before we sign off is, and it's pretty deep, but I know you like going deep, Jim. Why do you think you've been put on this planet? Like, what's your purpose?
Wow. I mean, right now to share a passion with as many people as I can and to get as many other people into sports, in particular SUP, and then, climbing as well as a sort of second one there as well. But the more people I can get into that and, help develop their skills and their own passion for doing it, the better. That's maybe my purpose.
Yeah, I get that from you, man. Well, I've really been inspired by listening to you. You have so much passion in your voice, and it's been really nice to take the last hour to just get to know you and to hear about all of your stories and hear of your experiences. And I really hope that we can do this again sometime, man.
Yeah, anytime. It would be a pleasure. Let me know, and it's no problem. I'm always more than happy to talk SUP. It's no hassle. Or mountaineering, no bother. And if you're in Scotland, as I said, hit me up, drop me a message. You got my email, you got my phone number, you got my Instagram. You let me know. Let's go for a paddle.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that, man. I would love the experience to just experience the culture with you, man. It would be a blast. Well, everyone that's listening, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Play Hard and Love Big Radio with the Holla Ambassador of the Year, outdoor enthusiast, and overall just total badass. I just think you're awesome, Jim Miller. In the show notes, check out Jim's Instagram and also check out the Highland Outdoor Adventure Program. Maybe someday you'll be paddling across the Loch Ness with Jim. I hope that someday maybe I get a chance to do that. That would be rad. Play Hard and Love Big Radio is the official podcast of Spotted Dog Yoga and SUP Shop. Check us out at spotteddogyoga.com. You can get Holla Gear paddleboards right from our showroom. And also, I'll jump on the phone and walk you through some paddleboard selections too, so you can find the right paddleboard for you if you have questions. Jim Miller, you have a really great rest of your day. Thanks for being a part of Play Hard and Love Big Radio, man.
Hey, you too. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, you got it, buddy. See you, everyone. Peace.